What is up, grinders? Welcome to an MMA Crunch Time. Before lock, I am your host, Mike Brown, here with Scroll Patrol. Jan, this is a fun card, up and down. Last week, poor Steve, man. Steve Urquhart, the guy had it. He just needed to close the deal. There's going to be some fights on this slate where I feel like there's going to be some upside, and then somebody's going to slip it up. They're going to fall into a submission. There's equity all up and down this card. Obviously, the women's fights kind of stick out as the ones that we don't target, but who knows? Anything's possible on this one.
Yeah. So the two things that like stick out for me are, you get one of these like heavyweight main events, and we see them every once in a while where it's like, ooh, it's like not going to be a 5-round fight. I think it's like 10-1 or maybe even longer to go the distance. And you never know, right? Like you got that 1 in 10 last time Derek Lewis fought, I think with Jailton Almeida, it went all 5 rounds. Didn't see that coming, but this one, it's probably not going to happen 2 times in a row. So, it leaves you in kind of like a not having that main event fight that's like always a little bit mispriced on DraftKings. FanDuel prices it up like it should be. DraftKings just kind of by tradition does not price up the main event, and so that makes it, that leaves you kind of always choosing generally a side of the main event and then 5 other spots. This one is not like that. And then also like you've got a lot of win equity in the like 7,500 to 8,200 or so range. The fighters in that mid range, mid lower range, like have seen the line move in their favor. So you've got a few fighters like Ruzabev, Charles Johnson, that have a really good amount of win equity for the price. I think they've got about 45%, 46% chance. Chase Hooper as well. 45 or so percent chance of winning their fight. Usually in that price range, it's like 38 to 40%. So a little bit more win equity. And yeah, we could see as a result, we could see some more underdogs winning.
I feel like this is a tricky one because there's a lot of upside on this card. But at the same time, I feel like getting those dogs correct is going to be super, super important. And, we have that exact same thing where we have the Ruzabev being, 33%. It seems like people are getting towards certain dogs and sticking the flag in, and there's getting a lot of ownership on some of these lately, right? I mean, week to week, we're dealing with 30 to 40% owned dogs. And unfortunately, the chalk's been hitting.
Yeah. It's interesting. We've had, was it Jan Top a couple of weeks ago who, had the basically mispriced fighter. And ownership should have gravitated towards him, and it did. And, then he went out and lost the fight.
Exactly.
Which was a big upset. I think, maybe the biggest upset on that card. We're getting some high owned underdogs, and, sometimes it's justified. Sometimes it may not be. Sometimes I think it's good to go in a different direction. We have some fights with upside. It's really interesting. And, we see obviously like Despain is out there with like a 50% chance of getting the first round win. Derek Lewis and Rybovics, also have about 35% chance, 35% chance of getting the first round win. So everybody gravitates towards that upside. Then when you start to see that ownership level go beyond the first round finish odds, it's like, well, like what does Derek Lewis's score look like, in the second, third round?
I think this slate, it's important mixing in those chalk plays, but I think it's even more so interesting in looking at some of the favorites that have low ownership. This is one of those scroll and blender type of, Mr. Burns hands coming out, right? I mean, you're just looking at a Sean Woodson who sneaky, and this is Liam behind the paywall said, Sean Woodson is one of the better point per dollar guys out there every time he fights. Sneaky, volume, control time, some perhaps takedowns once in a while. And I mean, 10% ownership here, that's a pivot away from things. Buckley is going to be leverage against the Ruzabev high ownership, I would imagine. It's just like, it seems like it's one of those cards where, I want to go to the obvious. I want to start with the main event. I want to start with like the Chase Hoopers, the Terrence McKinney. But I also want to leave that towards the end of the little cast we have going here. So, like, is that kind of how you would differentiate? Is trying to get some of these higher priced fighters that have lower ownership and look for a ceiling?
Yeah, I think so. And like we always think we know what are going to be the high upside fights, right? Until we don't, and then and it can go both ways. It can be this pain, Espana, fight. We think, well, somebody's going to put up 120 point score because he's going to get like a win within the first 60 seconds. But then maybe he doesn't. I mean, yeah, it's 50% shots of that first round win. What does the other 50% look like? I don't know. Like, yeah, the other 50% probably looks like him getting outscored by Sean Woodson, who he's doesn't put up a ton of points always, right? And he doesn't he's not going to go out and get like 12 takedowns and like some kind of rinse and repeat thing. Yeah, but he's a high volume striker, and like sometimes the high volume striking can be high volume enough that that it's actually kind of exceeding that 30 point per round level we're looking for, right? When we go from like a 90 point first round win to a 60 point second win. Well, if he gets 35 points in the first round, I want it to go to the second round, right? I no longer want that first round win because if he can get 35 more points in the second round, right? Then you're just rooting for a finish maybe at the end of the round. End of the third round is ideal there. So yeah, I do. I think it's kind of a consistent thing across all DFS sports, but like you want to look at where the ownership isn't, and really if you can find a way where this fighter can actually pay off this price at really low ownership, then maybe that's a place you want to be.
Are we kind of talking Woodson? Are we talking Buckley to a certain extent? And then there's going to be the middle range. And first fight of the night, I was going to tag her, okay? But I'm so terrified that this fight is so ugly it doesn't score. Veronica Hardy and JJ Aldridge. JJ Aldridge's fights just get lulled into nothingness. Like, I understand her single-digit ownership because even at 8K, she could get 60 points in a win. Like, it could be really, really ugly for her. But the upside and the only real play I can see is Veronica Hardy. Like, she seems to be somewhat of I'm not going to call her an X factor of the slate, but like at 8,200, she actually could easily score 105 points. And that wouldn't surprise me if she's getting takedowns, getting top control, maybe an outside shot at a submission. I mean, that's in play, but like get some pitter patter. There's not enough pitter patter. That's my big concern, right? Like you talk about low ownership. There's a fight that's going to have extreme low ownership.
Yeah. Veronica Hardy is a fighter I want to be over the field on. I actually started doing my write-up for her and then went to put it into the lineup HQ and realized I didn't have her tagged. And then I'm like, well, I don't want to have every I don't want to have every underdog tagged, right? So that's how close I was to having her tagged. I literally thought I had her tagged, did a write-up. I was like, oh, okay, scrap this. But yeah, she's got really good win equity for her price. So I think she's got, let me look at the pricing here. She's got better win equity than Tabitha Ricci, depending on where you look for the lines. Better win odds than Borshev, better win odds than Jake Hadley, and she's actually got better win odds, or about the same as Joaquin Buckley. Again, those fighters all have about the same win odds, but Veronica Hardy is the cheapest. And we all think she's probably she put up I think 58 points in her last win. Well, she's not gonna put up a huge score until she does, right? She can get some takedowns, and if those wins come at the end of the second round, suddenly it's a much higher score. Or the end of the first round, then it's a very, very high score, right? She's going to get some point striking. She could potentially get some takedowns. There's no real reason for her to be this low owned, especially with the solid win equity.
She's just so more likely to have a 30-27, and it's women's MMA. Anything can happen. It's just Aldridge isn't the most physical, isn't the most eye appealing, and she's easy to hit too. Her losses, what if I told you that she's given up 101 strikes, 2 takedowns in the past? She's gotten submitted in the second round. She's giving up 100 significant strikes and almost all of the decision losses as well. That's some sneaky upside.
Yeah, I agree. That's actually, I think, one of the most overlooked things. And I've started working on a cross-reference table just of old fights, right? Because you never calculate how many points does this fighter give up in their average loss.
What is the average? She's gone. We can't bet against Na Liang. She just got cut last week, John.
Yeah, I was actually looking because I was just looking at the JJ Aldridge game. But yeah, so JJ Aldridge gives up a lot of points. Then Veronica Hardy's there's no reason she should be this low owned. And the same thing true of I think the fight price right around it. Tabitha Ricci and Tisha Pennington. There's no reason to think that's necessarily going to be so much lower scoring than the men's fights that we like. Oh, you just can't go there. There's no upside. And I was saying this to Blender on Friday. Like I think we kind of underestimate floor. Maybe people overestimate ceiling because that ceiling can be very unpredictable. And a lot of times, the ceiling that we're perceiving with some fighters means like, well, it's going to be a fight that's going to end in the first round. But like, if you're on the wrong side of that fight and you get a 0, because the other guy gets the first round knockout, like that really knocks your entire lineup out of cashing. Whereas like I don't know, like some of these like 40-point scores from losing fighters can be very useful because the chances of getting 6 out of 6 are not that high. It's about 3% of all lineups are going to have 6 out of 6 wins. So like a lot of times that's on those 97% of the lineups when you're not getting 6 out of 6, like that 40-point score and the loss is much more useful than the 0-point high upside fighter.
Yeah, and it's easier when the main event has that floor and can go 5 rounds, whereas you have the heavyweights here. But TJ did ask in chat, Woodson and McKinney or Rivovich versus Goff. Well, Rivovich and Goff. I mean, I like the Rivovich and Goff fights as a whole a lot more. And the public aren't going to like the Woodson. The reason why we say Woodson is just because it gets you off of that ownership. So, I mean, the problem is McKinney, he's good until he's not, right, John?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Let's see.
Let me lead into what you were saying there in a little bit. McKinney actually scores like 40 points in the first, almost every freaking fight he fights. And then it's if he can get that finish or not, right? Like he actually, I would have tagged, and I did tag him as like, because he'll score like 25 points, multiple takedowns, control time, pitter patter for sure. But then he'll either die or kill the person in front of him.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I like the Goff side because like I don't think Goff's going to be as high owned as he should be. And I actually think he's another fighter like Woodson, maybe like the underdog equivalent that he can put a pretty high volume. And like his opponent is Trey Waters, who was not necessarily expected to get, an early finish.
Went up to 40% owned almost, or 35, 40%. That earlier in the week, it was closer to even for both of these guys when we did the ground and pound podcast. So that actually is surprising to me. Waters is so long for the division. Like I worry that he's able to just kind of use his length and keep Billy off. But Billy's aggression is one of those things where the scoring ability is going to make for a high floor.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a good floor there. I think a lot of the ownership from the Giuseppe and Sean Woodson fight might have kind of ended up in this because everybody's ownership went up a little bit when whenever you get a fight get canceled. So yeah, I think right some of the 9,200 Giuseppe ownership probably went to Trey Waters, which really inflated, and probably a lot of it went to Despaigne as well. So yeah, but I think this is a good fight. I don't think this is one because it doesn't necessarily have the high inside the distance, a really good shot for ending inside the distance. But I think this is a fight you want to maybe get to because it could have the volume you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a fight that's right there with it that you and I both tagged. Chase Hooper and Varoslav Borisev. I mean, Slava Claus coming in with the beard. It's funny because we've seen Chase grow up on the job. Okay. He still doesn't have any striking. He's going to be so significantly outgunned on the feet in this matchup that it's a binary matchup. I see it as Borislav just friggin' knocking him, clocking him multiple times, getting volume off on him on the feet, hurting him, getting multiple knockdowns, or Hooper exploiting his takedown defense. This is one of the only fights we've ever seen where Slava Claus has no takedown defense. It could take one takedown. He controls him. Maybe he goes in the second round, does the same thing. At least we know with Hooper, he continues to scramble, right? What was the fight there a few fights back where Fior, I mean, he had 120 points because he just kept moving on the ground and 200 strikes. That's pitter patter, man. This is hidden scoring. These are the types of fighters that you want to invest in that people might not know on the surface level of how much upside.
This is going to be an interesting one. I want to see the ownership here. I think it's going to end up high, unfortunately, because this is one of my favorite fights to target.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be an interesting test because there's not necessarily a bunch of odds numbers that would make this a really appealing fight. It's not like projected to like end inside the distance. Borshev has really good like early finish odds, like Hooper doesn't. Borshev's not necessarily that high volume, but I think it's the perfect matchup for points, right? Because like you've got a striker with heavy hands, no takedown defense, like a scrambler, with maybe a questionable chin, or that's the way that he can be like gotten to like no like striking defense or whatever. Perfect. Like that's great. I don't know who's going to win, but somebody's going to be able to use their style, hopefully, to score a bunch of points. And like, I think this is like a popular fight of the DFS people I've talked to. It's going to be interesting to see what the ownership is, because like I think it's going to see higher ownership than the projection we have. But I think it's what we have is a reasonable projection, kind of based off of the numbers. But I just think the mix of styles in particular, because like if you have like two grapplers, they can negate each other, right? We talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
And like two strikers maybe can like negate each other a little bit. But like a striker versus a grappler, like the mix of styles could be extreme here and could hopefully lead to a lot of points.
Hey, Chase Hooper had a kid too. He's got the dad narrative going for him now too. I mean, we remember he was a baby. He looked 16 when he came into the UFC.
I don't know if you heard my show on Friday with Blender, but I was talking about how I first started UFC during COVID. It was the first sport with DFS, and Chase Hooper against Alex Caceres was like a big favorite in one of the first UFC fights I was playing for DFS. And I'm like, oh, this guy's like a better than 2-1 favorite. He must be like a monster in there. And Chase Hooper won, but I didn't know what the fighters looked like, right? And then Chase Hooper comes out. He's got the curly hair.
You're like, oh no.
He looked like he's 8 years old. Like, this is the guy that's like the big favorite, and then he got like plastered.
Yeah, 3-round loss there. Oof. Yeah, the first one. That's funny when you don't even know what the commodities look like that you're going into. But this range is we're gonna pivot to is your favorite type of range of all time is the down low, man. I say Cortez, Caceres, who we just talked about, Menefield and Ferreira. You love mixing these types of plays in, and I just think that this is the dead range. Nobody wants to play these guys, and to be fair, I think that Cortez Acosta is going to be one of the best leverage plays we'll have in years if it hits, obviously. I think that's not even arguing if that ownership stays true. I just think when you look at the big ticket GPPs, people don't mind taking a little bit of risk. Like there was a same situation weeks ago where we had a guy, maybe it was the lawn top, right? It was funny. His opponent actually had some good ownership. It was like, say 12 to 15%. And I was surprised by that. But Cortez Acosta going to be huge leverage, obviously, with a great ceiling, because who the hell knows what Despond looks down the stretch. And then there's like, I don't want to overlook Menefield. I didn't want to fully tag him, but this is a guy who weight class dictates scoring. The problem is if it goes to a decision, who the hell knows what it looks like, but like the ability to finish the fights there. And I mean, Ferreira, I don't want to count out either, but it's tough to get behind him because of the durability.
Yeah. So this super low range, I guess, the 4 cheapest fighters. I think if you're doing like multi-entry, you've got to consider each of these guys. Ferreira is probably my least favorite. Like Rebecca actually does have pretty good win odds for his price. I think the lines like move somewhat in his direction, but it's like between like 75 and 80%, which is like pretty good for 9,400. But like the flip side is like Ferreira doesn't have that much win equity, even it's like 6,800. So be clear, absolutely play him if you've got a good, strong feeling about him. He should be probably higher owned than this like 6.5%. But I'm probably not going to be going crazy. I think like Menefield, Caceres, and Waldo Cortez Acosta, like something to keep in mind. I'm going to be playing. I'm going to try to be over the field, I think, on all these guys, or maybe just like right at the field with Caceres. Like I'm actually looking for upside a little bit more. Like often in this range, I'm saying, well, any kind of win is going to get them there, right? It's like we don't even need to think about upside. I think we actually do have to think about it a little bit in this bottom range, because I do think we're going to see probably at least 2 of these fighters in the 7,300 to 8,000 range, like that are underdogs. I think we'll see at least 2 of them win, because like they have like all of these fights are about a coin flip. So chances are at least 2 of them are going to win.
What do you think about that fight, the Despond versus Costa? Because listen, this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity type of fight, right? This guy's going to be mega chalk all the time to spawn. He's going to be juiced to have a first round finish. But I mean, do we ever have a chance where the quick win bonus is in play on DK? Like, it's legit in play.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough one. And he's not that expensive either. So like Pereira last week got the quick win bonus and like still got priced off the winning lineup in both the 555 and the large, super large field on DraftKings. But like, yeah, Spiny is only like 9,000. So, I mean, if he gets the quick win bonus, then yeah, he's probably on the winning lineup. If he gets the first round win, he's got a really good shot at getting on the winning lineup. He's got a 50% chance of getting the first round win according to Vegas odds. I'm not sure I'm a believer in the Vegas odds, and I usually take that pretty much as gospel. But like, I don't know. I mean, he's excellent. He's a Olympic medalist in a different sport, in Taekwondo. It's related, but it's not the same. And he made quick work of Mick Parkin, but I don't know. Like Mick Parkin, is probably not the same level as Waldo Cortez Acosta. Waldo's never been knocked out, I don't think, in the UFC. I think he was in his.
It was Josh Parisian. I would have bet Mick Parkin against Despawn, just to be fair. I to 100% clarity. It was Parisian. If he's fighting Mick Parkin, I'm putting shillings and multiple shillings on Parkin. But Cortez Acosta, why is this fight getting made? I always think you have to somewhat factor in, like, from what is the UFC trying to do? Like, are they going to test him? Because Costa is like what was he, a Dominican pitcher, I think. Honest to God, I think he was a pitcher, and he turned in and they're like, oh, he's throwing fastballs. What has this guy done in the UFC so far? He's gone to decision almost every single time. It's not like this is an A prospecting Waldo here. And getting turned back by Marcos Rogerio de Lima, that's not, dude, he's aging poorly.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just not confident that Despania can get him out of there quickly. And so then I don't know what happens. So then I don't know what, and I don't think anybody does. I think that's the thing. Like, nobody knows what Robelis looks like in minute 2. So yeah, and then maybe it's just kind of a sloppier heavyweight fight, right? Or maybe Waldo's on top for the first round and then Robelis knocks him out. I don't know.
We talk about uncertainty on this program all the time. This is the uncertainty. That's why I call it a once in a lifetime opportunity. Because like, what happens if Despawn just says, all right, well, I think I could take him down. He takes Acosta down and you get 1,000,000 points and then a finish. Like, this is going to be like a somewhat of a bold take, but it's like, I think Rebecca is smart enough to not go to war in the first round. And I worry about him at 9,400. I don't want to say this, but I have almost more faith in Despawn to at least know he'll go for that win in the first round. And I don't know if he's going to get bailed out by that second round. You need a lot of other things to go right, but the problem is you can easily get Rebecca into your lineups and you know what you're getting. What happens if he's timid? We just don't know when they're going to go in there and play safe in the first round, and that's the problem.
Yeah, it is. I think you've got to and we just saw the most expensive fighter get priced off. I don't know. I'm a believer in Rebecca. I think he's got an 80% chance of winning the fight, and I think we'll have enough underdogs win that I'm probably going to end up over the field. Like, he's probably my favorite fighter. But I agree. I mean, but any of the fights can bust. I just think that Rebecca's got about a 30% chance of getting the first round win, like 75 to 80% chance of getting the win in some fashion. So, and he's not necessarily low paced. So, yeah, I mean, any of the fights can bust. So I'm probably gonna end up over the field on Rebecca.
Absolutely. We talked about a pitcher, former pitcher in Waldo Cortez Acosta. Well, there's never been a better time to sign up for Roto Grinders Premium with NBA, PGA, NHL, MMA, and MLB. Maybe we'll see if Waldo loses, he'll switch over to pitching again. Maybe we can play him in. Have we ever had to buy a sport where we've had an athlete in 2 pools? I don't think we have. In the middle of the ad read, but I mean, I don't care. Like, have we? I don't think we have.
No. Yeah.
Deion Sanders? Imagine Deion Sanders. That would have been cool.
Yeah. We can't even get Shohei Ohtani with pitcher and hitting.
True. We've never had a better option. For whatever level you're looking for Roto Grinders Premium, get yourself a 6-month combo subscription at an exclusive price of $469.99. That's a savings of $250 instead of buying 6 individual months of combo premium. You can also get your first month of RG Premium for $40 off for a limited time. Those that want to get a test run before buying to dip their toes in the water, 3-day pass, $19.99. Check the links in the description for more info. And yeah, I mean, this is just one of those cards where it's like, if Nascimento goes in there, like this is the pivot, because it's like 25% ownership, Lewis 50, 60%. He's going to be a first click for many people. I have a feeling I'm terrified of Nascimento, but it's like decent camp ATT. I don't know why they're making him be the guy to get Lewis. Is it a bounce back spot, John? It's like, here, all right, here's Nascimento, who, has been hurt in the past, has rattled off some wins. It's a weird fight to be making, but the ownership we talk about all the time. There you go. Lewis does nothing. He's one of the commodities that I think I'll just fade long-term forever, because it's nothing, 0.4, right? Maybe. And then there's the finish.
Yeah, it really just depends how much you want to galaxy brain it. Because what I've been thinking is, like, I think Derek Lewis is going to be very popular. We show him as being very popular. I think he's going to be overall. I don't know if he's going to hit this like 56% ownership. I don't think he should. I think you should basically own him at about 33%, which is his odds of getting a first round win. 30 to 35%. You could argue a few percentage points less or more, but I think it should be in that range, and we're showing him as way higher than that. I don't know that necessarily the best pivot is to play Nascimento, though. It's like, I don't know if Nascimento is going to put up a huge score either. So then, like, what if it's just a lower paced fight that Nascimento wins in 3 rounds? I don't know if you want either. I don't know if you want Nascimento then, especially on a card where I think you could have some underdog putting up high scores priced beneath Nascimento.
What do you think he needs? What do you does he need the 10x on this particular card? Or do you think it's more like, I don't know. I don't even want to say 65, but if he gets like 70, like if he gets 10 points off his 80 points that he would need.
I think you'd need more, because I think you're gonna see some of these underdogs win. And like, not even going to like Ferreira or Menefield or whatever. I think like Terrence McKinney could put up a huge score in a win. Billy Goff could put up a huge score in a win. Rusev could put up a big score. Like Charles Johnson, probably not. But I think Chase Hooper, and I think Charles Johnson's got an excellent chance of winning this fight.
Can we pivot to that fight? Because I think that's a sneaky, fun fight for fantasy that people might not know. And it's got the weight class that I love to target. It's got the personalities that will try to push for a finish. Charles at home, Underdog. This is a guy that I think just signed a decent contract to have more fights, like a 4 or 5 fight contract. So the UFC is investing into. And then you look at Jake Hadley, his fights friggin' produce, man. Like, this is a guy who's been taken down 4 times in a fight, controlled. This is a guy who's gone out there and had great boxing and knocked people out. This is somewhat overlooked on a fight card where, obviously, we just talked about Lewis, right? Lewis is going to get that ownership. Nobody wants to play the 2 women's fights below him. Charles Johnson, 7,600. If he's going to have a fighter right there in his face for scoring purposes, might be very, very interesting. And on the other side, if Hadley gets a finish and kills off some of that Johnson, hometown loving, it's just not enough low ownership for me to go there. But I don't hate sprinkling this one.
I agree. So my concern is that Charles Johnson does have a good shot of winning like a lower scoring win. But I don't know. I mean, his ownership is reflecting the fact that he's generally low scoring. But maybe he's not. We can't predict that stuff as well as we think we can. A lot of it comes down to, like, is he getting a win at the absolute end of the second round versus like the beginning of the second round, right? Like, beginning of the second round is maybe a 65-point win. End of the second round, maybe it's 85. And then that's, at like 7,600, that's not a bad score to have. So yeah, I do. I like the idea of being over the field on this fight. Like, there's no reason like these fighters should just be like 20% owned and like 15% owned or 13% owned.
With the two factors of the fight cancellation that should trickle to this fight, and then just those two women's fights are, like I said, you and I love the Hardy, maybe not use the word love, but just to differentiate with the ceiling. But still, people don't want to go there. I don't understand why Johnson's not going higher owned and Hadley getting a little bit just from game log hunting.
I think the issue is that I think people think Charles Johnson's going to win the fight, and he is. He's got really good win equity for his price. And then they think like, well, like Hadley puts up a high score, but he isn't going to win. Johnson puts up a low score, he's going to get the win. So they're just not going to go to the fight. But like that's not. I don't think that's necessarily how it's going to play out. Hadley's the favorite, so he's got the slightly better chance of winning the fight. And Charles Johnson isn't necessarily going to be low scoring if he gets the win. He's the St. Louis fighter. So yeah, I like the idea of being over these ownership percentages.
And let's round out this one with just 12 fights. It's like you shake your head. You're like, we need more fights. I think next week we have 12 as well. But Rosartan Ruzaboev is like the money line, like underdog people want. But I mean, Joaquin Buckley at home. Did you see him on the face off? He's like counting money out in front of him. The guy doesn't speak English. I'm like, what are you doing, Buckley? Come on, man. I mean, is he going out there to take his head off? Because Ruzaboev looks freaking huge. Did you see the size disparity?
Yeah, so he's 6'5", right? Like,
yeah,
people are going crazy about Rebellis being 6'7", I think.
It's a bigger disparity.
Yeah. So yeah, he's like 6'5", but their reach is about the same. So it's going to be an interesting fight to watch, and I think it's a good fight to get to, right? Like, I think you could see, you could see a high score in this fight. So yeah, I think Ruzaboev's got the. I think I even put it in my write up. He's going to be a high owned underdog, but he deserves it. He's got like the win equity, the chances of getting the high score. So I'm not going to. This is not a fighter that is getting a lot of ownership that I'm going to look to fade or be under the field, or I think he's going to get less ownership. Like, I'm going to be right there with like probably 35% of the field.
Usually we like to talk about the unknowns, but this guy's fought like freaking 40, 50 times, right? 34, 8-2. And I feel like we still don't even know what he is. Like 2 first-round finishes, and we don't know. Like, what does he look like down the stretch? Not to mention, Buckley sometimes like gasses out too. So I feel like there's like hidden scoring ability, even if it goes a little bit deeper, which is weird to say.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a high scoring one. Buckley doesn't have like a bunch of high scores, but he's got the highlight reel knockouts, right? So those should score for something. But yeah, I think it's a good fight to get to. I'm probably going to be heavier on the Ruzaboev side, even though Buckley is the St. Louis native. But just like he's got win equity, and he's got like proven high score potential, whereas Buckley, I think, is a little more hit or miss.
Absolutely. And like I talk about next week, we end up having Edson Barbosa in another main event versus Leron Murphy. Worry about the ceiling in that one, but top to bottom, we got women's MMA. Ugh, very ugly. Tamaris Vidal is back in there. Remember Tom Nolan last time he was in there?
Yeah.
Stone cold shock. Boom, deaded. So, yeah, final takeaway from you, John, and we'll get out of here.
I think we're going to see some really live underdogs. I think, I don't know if you should be considering the fighters from like 8,200 down to 7,300, even like underdogs. Like, a lot of them are coin flip fights. So I think we're going to see 2-3 of those fighters win. I think they could be high scoring wins. So don't be afraid of the underdogs in this one.
Yeah, nice to see MMA growing. All of the bigger pools are filling up early too. So we know TJ's getting in those streets. Thank you for tuning in. For TJ, Squirrel Patrol, myself, we are out of here.